Welcome to the briefing. We have Rob Shedd and Neil Strauss here also. And this is our first briefing that we're doing this way this season. We plan to continue these every other Friday, if not sooner. With, of course, transitioning to the winter-spring outlook, we'll be concentrating more on the snow and the ice in the area. Now, as we look at our usual MODIS image that was taken a couple days ago, pretty much we have a bare ground area across southern New England, southern New York, and the rest of the area is pretty iced up, except for some of our deeper lakes and ponds. I like to look at the false imagery on the next slide to look at ice a little better. If you look at the very center here of the slide, you can see we have ice in the Connecticut River all the way down just about to the mouth of the river. Some ice in the bays off the south shore of Long Island. And even if you look a little closer at this image that you can all look at on MODIS today, from either Aqua or Terra, you can see ice on the Hudson, the Mohawk, and a lot of our other rivers. And of course, we can look closer at the Champlain, the lower left. You can see that most of the shallow area of Champlain is open, is ice covered, excuse me, the north and east part. But the deep waters, west and southwest of Burlington, are still open. And on the right slide, we can see Winnipesaukee got a nice cover, and Sebago is open, and Wachusett and the Quabbin Reservoir still have some openings. This image does. It's one of the best ones we can look at right now. This orbiter here. For the last 2 weeks, some of the highlights, we started early, cold early, right after the 9th, a brief warm-up, and then basically seasonal temperatures for the last few days. We have had river ice formation in the last 2 weeks continue with some freeze-up jams that I'll talk about in a little while. We had one significant event. It was an inside the benchmark low-pressure area with a brief warm-up last weekend. We had temperatures go from the single numbers and teens into the lower 50s here in southeastern New England. We had some increase in snow depths in the snow water equivalent, especially in the higher elevations, but we still see below normal conditions with our snow water equivalent and snow depth. In the last 2 weeks, we had on these two maps here, left and right precipitation and the lower right departure from normal precipitation. You can see that the Housatonic, Connecticut, Upper Merrimack rivers had above normal precipitation from that one inside the benchmark storm that came in here last week, where it dumped 1 to 2 inches. So it's slightly above normal in the last 2 weeks precipitation in those watersheds. The remainder of the area is a little bit drier than normal for the last 2 weeks. Looking at our snow conditions, top map is snow water equivalent from NORIS, and we can see the typical high or elevation areas of the Tug Hill Plateau in New York here, the Adirondacks, the Greens, the Whites, and western Maine. We have anywhere from 3 to 5 and maybe 6 inches of snow water equivalent. Elsewhere in the coastal plain and the low areas of the Champlain Valley into the lower Mohawk and south, not much at all for snow water equivalent. And east of Lake Erie, we have some 2 to 3, maybe 4 inches of snow water equivalent there. The lower left-hand graphic is the snow temperature. And the southeastern New England red that you see is around 32 degrees. Most of that snow is gone here. We have no snowpack. But most of the snowpack temperature that we do have is well below 32 degrees. The lower center graphic is the snow density, and it's nowhere near quote-unquote ripe potential, so it's pretty dry still. In the lower right-hand is the 72-hour snow melt that we're anticipating, and very little snow melt either. In-house here, Norm Bingham put together a map that you can look at that depicts the snow water equivalent highlight map. You can see the amounts a little better. And we feel that these snow water equivalents, even in the higher terrain, are a little bit below normal than where they should be this time of year. With much of the area, the coastal plain and the lowlands, as I was mentioning before, less than 1 inch or no snow water equivalent at all. From the USGS, the current stream flow conditions, southern New England, normal, the above normal that we see in the part of the Connecticut and over to the Merrimack Basin from that event that just occurred. but mostly normal, and even Rhode Island is even having some below normal stream flow conditions. The lack of data in northern New England and northeastern New York is because everything's iced up. On our groundwater conditions that we got from the USGS, you can see mostly the groundwater is in the normal range, except some below normal conditions in New York State. Water supply and lake levels. The New York City water supply system is 79.5%, 6% below normal. The upper right, the Quabbin Reservoir, Boston's water supply is normal operating conditions. Situate Reservoir, the Providence water supply, is slightly lower than normal, but no real issues. And the Lake Champlain level, if you look on the graph on the very left, it's running about normal for this time of year. As we look at our soil moisture, river ice thickness, and frost depths, the Palmer and crop moisture indices are indicating near to above normal moisture conditions. Of course, the ground is frozen throughout the area. River ice thicknesses after a warm December, warm first week of January, we have normal to above normal accumulated freezing degree days. And Caribou gave us some information on ice jams that are in place. On the St. John River, there's a freeze-up, break-up jam that's 10 to 15 miles long. And on the Aroostook River near Washburn, there's one 5 to 8 miles long. The river ice thickness is 8 to 15 inches, not too impressive on rivers in interior northern New York into central and northern Maine. And here in southern New England, the river ice thickness is between 3 and 6 inches, not very impressive. Frost depths, Albany around 10 inches and Caribou 6. And here's a station just west of our office down here in Taunton, where 18 inches of frost in the open lawn on a very sandy soil profile because we've had no snow at all to speak about, so the frost is very deep. But just 100 feet away, there's only 1 inch in the wooded duff layer in the sandy profile, so it's a big difference, but we have quite a frost depth down here because of the lack of snow this winter. If we look ahead, the theme for weeks 1 and 2 are cold with a potential snow, more snow. Normal temperatures right now transitioning to below normal for the next week to 2 weeks, with above normal precipitation predicted on the extreme eastern part of our service area. Our 48-hour QPF shows the first event going by with up to 1 inch precipitation, both rain and snow along the coast. And the 7-day WPC graphic is showing that that continued talking about the heaviest precipitation right along the coast. So we'll be thinking mainly below normal temperatures and above normal precip along the coast for the next 2 weeks. Of course, we'll be watching any coastal development. This time of year, we do like to look at some of the teleconnecting patterns, and one of them is the North Atlantic Oscillation. And as you remember, when you hear about Greenland blocking and cold air intrusion into New England staying there, you would think of this North Atlantic Oscillation. This year, if you look at the chart from December through now, the oscillation's mostly been in the positive range. The outlook is positive to neutral. And right under the graph there on the left, for January, that's the composite temperature anomaly for a neutral or positive NAO. And you see here, warmer than normal for the Northeast. So how does that buy into what we're talking about?
So
one of the other, one of the other teleconnections are Pacific North American pattern, and we're the forecast is for near neutral conditions, and one of the composite temperature anomalies for January are normal to above normal temperatures. Well, these patterns are being overridden by something called the East Pacific Oscillation, and here on the upper left, I'm looking at a correlation plot of the seasonal surface temperatures for the new negative EPO mode that NOAA has come up with. So in that mode, temperatures across the eastern part of the country, central and eastern part, are generally below normal in that mode. And if you look at the upper right graphic for January, the composite temperature anomalies are cold. Lower left graphic is NOAA's prediction of, from left to right, upper to lower, the PNA, the NAO, both positive. So there's no blocking going on. the lower left, lower right are the WPO and EPO Eastern Pacific oscillations, which are negative. And negative oscillation for January means colder than normal. And if you look at the lower right, the last 2 weeks from the Northeast Regional Climate Center, we're averaging anywhere from 0 to 4 or 5 degrees below normal across New York and New England. So the offsetting positive PNA and NAO are offset by this Eastern Pacific oscillation, which is considered having more of an influence in our weather pattern. And this coincides with the outlooks from CPC for the 6 to 10 and 8 to 14 day. The left two graphics are the below normal temperatures for the Northeast in the 6 to 10 and the higher precipitation along the coastal basins. The 8 to 14 day was still in its very cold pattern, below normal temperatures into early February, with normal to just above normal precip possible along the East Coast. So the surface map for Sunday, January 25th, low pressure is just off the coast of New England, bringing the first real significant snow for parts of interior southeastern New England, southern New England. And the 500 millibar, 20,000 foot level map shows a big trough in the east and a big ridge in the west, which is kind of going to be the dominant feature for the next 2 weeks. I'm showing you a map only a couple days later because if you look up towards Greenland, that low pressure is which was our Sunday low pressure, is already there because there is no blocking. That's how quickly systems are progressing, and there's yet a second system somewhere off the mid-Atlantic to off southern New England. There'll be a lot of tweaking of the models, but what it's showing here is cold, potential snow. And 500 millibar shows big trough along the East Coast, big ridge in the west, coincident with what I talked about, the teleconnecting patterns. And if we go out to February 2nd, Groundhog's Day, we're still in the cold pattern here in the east with more potential storminess from the Gulf to Mid-Atlantic states that may get involved here later. And the 500 millibar continues to show the ridge in the west and a little bit of a flatter, different shaped trough in the east. What we also do is daily we put out a hydrologic discussion, which will be on Twitter and sometimes on Facebook. And if something is serious enough that we want to tell all our partners, we'll also send it to them daily. So our flood potential outlook, taking into consideration the weather pattern, the less amount of snow in the area than normal. Ice thickness is a little less than normal, even though this map here is not showing any flood potential from ice jams. But taking everything into consideration, even though we do have normal to slightly above normal stream flows, which will be receding, flood potential for the whole area is below normal for the next 2 weeks. And we'll be getting back on the usual schedule of Fridays at 11 a.m. every 2 weeks. Next one will be February the 6th. And there's a picture from some of our snowshoers here in the office that were in southern Vermont a couple days ago. Questions from anyone? Is anybody out there?
Yeah. Hey, Ed, one thing here. So last week when we had that rain event come through, it's pretty clear that in the coastal plains and the flat areas where there's been no snow, rivers responded pretty quickly, as in, pretty direct runoff. So that was interesting to see that that snow depth, that frost depth report of 18 inches there kind of validates how, sort of what was going on last week in the smaller watersheds.
Yeah, George, that's my co-op station. I take those two measurements, and what I've found interesting is in the sand without snow profile, we get the deep depth, but just on the edge of the woods is almost no frost because of that duff layer. And I've changed the tubes back and forth to see if something's wrong with the tubes, but I was surprised to get that big difference. And when that went through last week, the first top 3 inches melted off the 18-inch depth tube, and I had 3 inches back then in the woods. That all melted off.
Yeah, good.
So, no other comments. We'll talk to everybody in 2 weeks, if not sooner. Oh, looks like pretty quiet for flood potential. 2 weeks.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.